The Supreme Court has just handed down a landmark breaking decision that has made President Trump the most powerful president in your lifetime or mine, completely reconstituted the executive branch, and will serve as the silver bullet, the stake through the heart of the deep state. It is the most important decision that was ruled on by the court today. And you need to understand it because everything's going to change now. President Trump is celebrating this. Libs are trying to hide that this just happened. You have to understand how Washington, D.C. is about to be rocked by this. Every institution, system, business, army needs to be run by a general. That general needs to have control, right? Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief of the military. There needs to be a structure that works. When the commander-in-chief makes a decision, that decision needs to be followed through with immediately, ruthlessly, swiftly. If you have breakdown in command, the entire institution falls to pieces. And that's the same if you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And that's the same if you are an entrepreneur with just a couple of employees and contractors that help you build social media channels. If you can't hire, fire, promote, demote, make swift decisions for the betterment of the enterprise that you are engaged in, then your enterprise is over. And this is what President Trump has had to deal with, and every president for the last 91 years. The hollowing out of something called the vesting clause. This is Article 2 of the Constitution. The executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America. This is the only time that an entire branch is vested in one sole person that we choose. Doesn't happen with the Senate, doesn't happen with the House, doesn't happen in the judiciary. There's a million of those people. There's millions of senators and millions of members of Congress. Not one man is vested the entire authority of the branch of government. It only happens with the president. And it's something incredibly powerful. It's as close as we got to divine right to rule, right? It's as close as we get to a king, where one man becomes the entire branch. And for the last 91 years, a very wrongly decided case from 1935, Humphrey's Executor versus United States, laid the groundwork for agencies to have protections from the president, even inside of the executive branch. This is what is the deep state. The deep state is permanent Washington, D.C. that cannot be fired by the president, that exists throughout every presidential term, whatever movements are going on, whatever the will of the people is, it doesn't matter. The president can't get rid of us. No one can ever get rid of us. We're accountable to no one. But what does that sound like? That is the deep state. Well, guess what? The Supreme Court just gutted that, ruling that, yes, Donald Trump can mass fire federal employees, can even mass fire independent agencies and agency heads, because he is the executive. He has the supreme right here via the Constitution to fire. The vesting clause gives him the ultimate right to remake the executive given the will of the people. Supreme Court overrules 90-year-old precedent, frees the president to fire pretty much anyone he wants. Supreme Court ruled today that President Trump can remove Federal Trade Commission members at will. In doing so, it overrules Humphrey's Executor in 1935 that protected independent agencies for 9 decades. The case Trump versus Slaughter, and it reshapes the federal bureaucracy. Trump fired 2 of the Federal Trade Commission's Democrat commissioners, Rebecca Slaughter and Beoya, whatever the hell. Early in the second term, he did not claim cause. He simply says their service is no longer needed. Okay, well, he didn't want them there. He's the executive. Tough luck. Hit the bricks. Anyway, they sued, of course, because they're the deep state. Commissioners can only be removed for inefficiency, neglect of duty, malfeasance. Slaughter sued to get her job back. She won, but the court reversed it. John Roberts, writing for the majority, said the Constitution vests executive power in one person, the president. He has to be able to remove the officers who wield that power on his behalf. because the FTC clearly exercises executive power, he wrote, its commissioners answer to the president. Humphrey's executor said, and has long been the result of rationale, the court has now lit it on fire. The vote was 6-3, all the conservatives, siding against all the libs, of course. It's worth noting this is alongside the Cook decision that was handed down the same day. The court protected Federal Reserve's independence while stripping it from the FTC here. It's very interesting that, well, Donald Trump will now have the ability to fire anyone who is exercising executive power on his behalf. Well, who exercises executive power? He's the commander-in-chief. So that's the entire military structure. And that's the entire financial and economic structure. You can go ahead and read through here in the Constitution what the president has the right to do. And it is the vast majority of these services provided by the federal government. Now listen, all the heads of the departments, everything that is run under the Secretary of State, Department of Education, Department of Energy, all of that. It's a nightmare for libs. It's a nightmare for the left. Donald Trump is celebrating this to show the importance of the Slaughter case. 90 years of precedent has been completely and unequivocally overruled, greatly increasing presidential power at a time when it is most needed. Donald Trump is gleefully celebrating here. Big win. Just moments ago, the Supreme Court, the Slaughter case, confirming presidential power in our country to remove executive branch officers and agency appointees or representatives under Article 2, meaning Trump can fire anybody who's exercising presidential power, executive power. That's like 90% of the federal government's payroll. I mean, the other branches are the judiciary. That's way too big, by the way. And the legislative. Those are independent branches. But the executive branch is enormous. Should it be that big? Should it be so overwhelming? No. But it is what it is. And Donald Trump now has the right to actually command and control it. It's beautiful. Here's the decision. Trump versus Slaughter is the biggest decision today and the most damaging for Dems. Hopefully it drives them to call for John Roberts' retirement, and he complies. The Republican president can fire anyone. Totally changes the nature of the executive branch. Republican president can be a Republican president. Democrat presidents do not need this because, well, there's no conservative workers in our federal government. It's the deep state. They act, of course, on behalf of Democrats, and then they flip immediately into the resistance when a Republican's in charge. The Democrats need near immunity to build a permanent presence in Washington, D.C. and the White House. That's gone. Ooh, very good. Huge win. Supreme Court overrules Humphrey's executor. I urge that result in an amicus brief. Massive win for executive power, President Trump, and the Constitution. Another appropriate decision, SCOTUS once again determines the president is indeed in charge of the executive branch, not those running imaginary fourth branch of government made up of unaccountable agencies. Very good. Humphrey's executor overruled. Everybody, the right people are celebrating. Progressives mock the executive as a kooky theory. Yeah, whatever. Summarized by Clarence Thomas. Let's go ahead and read. The president may remove his subordinates at will, without cause, without notice, without having a hearing, as long as they exercise executive power. Any statute that limits the president's power to remove and thus supervise and wield executive power on his behalf is unconstitutional. Boom. This is how we win. I know there's a bad ruling on voting. We're not here to celebrate that. Amy Coney Barrett got it, and John Roberts got it atrociously wrong. But I'm already seeing ways that can be challenged, and I'm already seeing the limiting factors on that. This is something that is totally. This is something that is an entirely generational win, because it will give every Republican the ability to gut the deep state. It is effectively the ruling that destroys the deep state if we have the will to power. So let's go. It's your boy Benny.